So today we're talking about conscious sex. What on earth am I talking about? Isn't all sex conscious? I mean, we were awake, right? Well, I mean, it's a way of talking about the kind of sex which is the opposite of what you might think of as more conventional sex. Like a lot of us, we kind of learn sex from films. I sometimes think of it a bit like, I remember I watched American films, like lots of Brits when I was growing up. A lot of the films came out of Hollywood in the 80s, and they would talk about first base and second base and third base. And it became this kind of euphemism for this kind of sex where you do this thing and then you do that thing and then you do the next thing, and it's very habitual. And so why talk about something more conscious? It's because a lot of people get stuck in that kind of a habit of just doing the same old thing, and then I was going to say it gets boring. It can get boring. I mean, it may not. That may be working wonderfully, but it may be that it's a bit repetitive. And conscious sex is about getting out of that autopilot, out of that habit of doing the same thing over and over again, and also out of doing like particular acts as a performance. When I talk to couples as a sex therapist about sex and about what they do, often people are in a kind of performance mode. I talk to a lot of men who are very concerned about getting it right, about having an erection, having a hard on, about being able to perform and do certain acts of sex. And it's the same for women. Women feel like they want to please, they want to do a good job, they want to be the sexiest. And conscious sex is about trying to drop some of that emphasis on performance and explore what it comes more naturally. It's about more nourishing, more gentle, more relaxing ways of being together that don't have goals. And within that, one of the things I think is really interesting about that is that there's an opportunity to discover quite a lot more that's more subtle. Because when we're actually just doing acts, then we may not be feeling as much. So one of the most important things about conscious sex is that it isn't a performance, that we're not trying to get it right, do it right, that we are just finding out as we go, being curious. I sometimes talk about it's not about the posh knickers. I think often when you read articles about how to spice sex up or how to have more interesting sex, and in novels too, it's all about like, oh, I'm going to go and get this fancy lingerie or wear stockings. And actually, if you're having very conscious sex, then probably no one cares what the underwear looks like, because it's more about what you're feeling inside in your body. So the most important thing about conscious lovemaking that we're talking about today is that it isn't a performance. That you don't have to get anywhere or do anything. I'm absolutely amazed on Love Island where they talk about these sex positions, and you go and look them up, like I don't know, the butter churner and the well, I do know the reverse Kangol. I didn't need to look that one up, but there are other ones I've had to go and look up, and I think the nations, on Google trying to find them out, and they're very athletic, and I'm sure for some people that's really really good fun, and for others that can be just like really intimidating. The idea that there's some particular performance aspect to sex that you have to get right, or that you have to have a certain body type for, or a certain level of agility for. And conscious sex, you don't have to do anything. There isn't anything to get right. I'm also really fascinated by, like, in articles in magazines, we'll often talk about sexy lingerie. And I know for many of my clients that sexy lingerie is a great way into the erotic. But actually, in this kind of lovemaking, it really doesn't matter what you're wearing. It's about feeling. It's about getting into feeling. And you might like to wear something that's just really makes you feel comfortable, like, a lovely silky dressing gown or something that feels good to be touched in. That you're not, that you're not having to be overtly erotic, because what you're doing is feeling and softening, and it's a kind of nourishing, relaxing kind of experience. So, another way to support this kind of slower, more conscious sex is to use the breath in order to slow down. So, we know from our study of the nervous system that when we take longer out breaths, that calms the nervous system down. It allows us to access what we call the parasympathetic nervous system. That's the rest and digest part of the nervous system. And that helps the whole body to relax, to soften, to feel calm. And so longer out breaths really support that, as does pausing. So you might be touching, and then there'll be some time when nobody's doing anything and you're just taking some breath, seeing what emerges authentically from that pause, that rest. So if you're interested in finding out more about conscious sex, or in fact lots of other topics to do with intimacy and relating and long-term partnership, I have a website. You'll find the link below, and I do masterclasses throughout the year where I share about these topics and invite you to share too. So please, check it out below, and I'd love to see you there.